Hearing loss is something that can make life very difficult. We really take our ability to hear things for granted, which is natural, since it's one of our 5 senses. For those who suffer from hearing loss, hearing aids can make it possible for them to get the same quality of life as the average person. In this video, we'll be examining how hearing aids really work. To really understand how hearing aids work, we have to know how hearing loss works. There are actually many problems that can affect the ear, and the big symptom in all of them is naturally some degree of hearing loss. We'll break some of them down, and that'll give us the background to know how hearing aids can help cope with these conditions. Hearing loss generally comes in 2 types: sensorineural hearing loss and conductive hearing loss. The latter simply means that sound enters your ear, but it's unable to make it through the ear canal to the eardrum or vibrate the eardrum enough to stimulate your nerves. Most of the time, this is caused by earwax or other stuff building up in your ear, and it can be sorted out at the ENT. Worst case scenario is a punctured eardrum. Sensorineural hearing loss is a bigger issue, and this hearing loss is usually permanent. These are cases whether either the ear itself or the auditory nerve is damaged. If it's the kind of damage that can be repaired, great, but especially when it comes to nerve damage, options can be quite limited. And while we're laying the groundwork, what are the most common types of hearing loss? 3 of the most common forms of sensorineural hearing loss are aging, tinnitus, and loud noise. Age-related hearing loss is technically called presbycusis, and it's a genetic condition. Patients who have it will experience changes in their inner ear and auditory nerve as they grow older. It doesn't always cause hearing loss. It'd be more accurate to say it causes funny business in the ears, and that can include hearing loss. You've probably already heard of tinnitus. It's often described as a ringing in the ears. In reality, it isn't just ringing, as tinnitus can manifest as roaring, clicking, hissing, or buzzing. In some cases, it isn't loud enough to require hearing aids, and in other cases, the patient can barely hear themselves think. Tinnitus is usually a symptom of a problem, and whether or not it can be treated depends on the problem. Hearing loss due to loud noise exposure is unfortunately the single most common cause of hearing loss because it kind of happens to everyone. As babies, our hearing is so sharp that we actually struggle with noises that are normal for adults. And then a lifetime of hearing loud things gradually wears down our auditory nerve and eardrum. Some people have a higher exposure to loud noise over their lives, so they suffer more hearing loss. According to the World Health Organization, more than 1.5 billion people worldwide suffer from hearing loss. That's a huge number. And while the most common cases of hearing loss are associated with old age, the fact is that more than 1 billion people aged 12 to 35 are at risk of developing hearing loss. It gets worse, as the WHO expects this number to grow to 2.5 billion in the next 8 years. To date, the cost of unaddressed hearing issues is estimated at $980 billion. We don't see the number billion thrown around as much as we just did, so clearly hearing loss is a major health concern. Hearing aids are an important tool for addressing it. Now we get to the meat of today's video: hearing aids. Hearing aids are exceptionally simple devices, considering how much they help the people who need them. You might be surprised by how straightforward they are in concept and why no one ever thought about making hearing aids before. The reason why they're so simple is that they're basically just headphones. Like headphones, hearing aids come in different styles. Behind the ear aids have a plastic loop with a speaker on one end and everything else on the other end. The loop goes around the curve of the ear to secure it, and the speaker goes into the ear canal. In-the-ear aids may not suit everyone, but they're more effective generally, and some come with a feature called a telecoil, which makes it easier to hear things over the phone. And finally, for people who want their hearing aids to be completely unseen, they can opt for in-canal aids, whose entire assembly goes into the ear canal and stays there. Setting aside extra features that hearing aids may have, they all work in basically the same way. And how is that? Most hearing aids consist of 3 parts: a mic, a speaker, and an amplifier. The mic listens to the sounds around the user, while the amplifier boosts the volume of the sound while avoiding distortion and clipping. The speaker then feeds the sound into the ear. Depending on the recommendation of the doctor or audiologist, you may get a digital hearing aid or an analog hearing aid. If you know anything about headphones, you'll know that analog hearing aids can provide a cleaner and warmer output of audio into the ear because sound itself is analog. These hearing aids are also programmable, and the audiologist will program the aid to the specific nature of the patient's hearing loss. They can also create profiles for different types of rooms and settings the patient might encounter. Digital hearing aids, on the other hand, receive audio and then convert that to a digital signal. An onboard computer can then apply various processing effects on that signal before converting it back into sound and putting it into the patient's ear. Going digital gives users the benefit of algorithms that can intelligently adjust the audio output given the context the patient is in. These can be programmed too, but there's usually less of it involved. All this convenience and hardware can make digital hearing aids expensive, but not as expensive as they used to be. So hearing aids are amazing little devices. Since hearing loss is so common, you'd expect to see more of them. But the truth is that, according to the U.S. National Institute of Health, among patients who need hearing aids, only 1 in 5 have them. Why is that? We mentioned the other reason for this earlier, but hearing aids are expensive. Whether they're digital or analog, and no matter how far they go into your ears, hearing aids can be costlier than many people can afford. In the U.S., their prices range from hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars. That doesn't include consultations with an audiologist to help get the right one for your needs and programming. It also doesn't cover regular maintenance costs or repairs. Depending on a million factors, including a patient's financial situation, health insurance, and state medical aid, not every patient who needs a hearing aid can afford one. Keep in mind also that most people who need hearing aids are older, so they might be retired. And just because a patient can afford some types of hearing aids doesn't mean they'll be able to afford the specific one they need. And a final point about cost is that if a patient is suffering from hearing loss, it may have other implications for their socioeconomic situation. A hearing impaired patient might not have a job or a well-paying one. They may need to be able to pay for other corrective treatments to their ears. And again, since hearing loss tends to affect older people, the hearing problems will often be just one on a long list of medical conditions. Few patients will prioritize their hearing over, say, cardiac treatments or buying insulin or arthritis medication. And finally, cost isn't the only reason patients might be reluctant to get hearing aids. A major reason why people might not opt for hearing aids is because they may not realize they're having hearing problems at all. Most of the time, hearing loss is gradual. It can happen so slowly that a patient won't realize anything is wrong until it's pointed out to them, or some incident draws their attention to it. What often happens with medical conditions like these is that it also becomes hard for a patient to accept that this is a problem. It's similar to how patients of diabetes struggle with their diagnosis. They were so sure everything was okay that being diagnosed with a chronic health condition hits them like a sack of bricks. The idea that they now need an assistive device as well can be more than a patient can bear. Here's where we'll offer some advice. If you suspect that you're suffering from hearing loss or you know someone who does, you're not alone. Millions of people worldwide are dealing with hearing issues, and in your own life, you have friends and family who care for you. There's no stigma or harm in getting a hearing aid. In fact, once you put them in, having a better sense of hearing will make your life better than ever. If you're struggling with insecurity or feelings of being broken or incomplete as a person, lean on your support network, or you could always seek professional help. And that's all for our explanation of hearing aids. Are you a hearing aid user? Do you know one? If so, share your experiences with using hearing aids in the comments section below. And if you all have any questions, we're definitely ready to hear you out in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.